We're now in a new phase of the same 2019 coup, in which the right-wing campaign to exclude Evo from the ballot was successful. Without him as an option, two right-wing candidates advancing to the runoff was inevitable.
The U.S. just completed their several-year coup of Bolivia. Here's from NPR's centrist Rodrigo Paz wins Bolivia's presidential runoff, topping right-wing rival. Except this is not really centrist when you understand how these things work. This is neoliberal. This is, let's sell off our country. We will allow the U.S. and the billionaire class to buy up and steal our country, and we will not join up with, the pink tide, they called it in Latin America, Venezuela, Cuba, etc. Whereas Bolivia was, for a while, very important in that pink tide of socialism, of standing up against the U.S. empire. Bolivia also has a large amount of the world's lithium, so very important to the United States, especially now that we're in this trade war with China, and China can stop us from getting rare earth minerals. You may be wondering, well, what's this got to the United States, and how is this a U.S.-backed coup? Seems like just an election. Well, I'm going to let a different reporter explain it because she'll do a better job than I can. It's from Sachin News.
Bolivia held illegitimate elections today in which the popular bloc representing the indigenous campesino movement was excluded. Bolivians were supposed to be voting for a new president and legislature. However, the most influential political figure in the country, Evo Morales, was banned from running. Evo was elected as the first indigenous president of Bolivia in 2005, the country with the largest proportion of indigenous peoples in the Americas. Under his tenure, Bolivia reduced poverty and extreme poverty by 42% and 60% respectively, all due to significant policy changes like key nationalizations and taking state ownership of the country's natural resources.
Nationalization means that the profits from these immense resources in Bolivia go to the people rather than going to the rich, rather than going to the oligarchy, rather than going to the dick helmets at the top of the system. And of course, that is horrifying to the rich, to the oligarchy, to the U.S., which is an oligarchy as well. Evo Morales, they were able to keep him out of running by using lawfare. And the U.S. has been pivotal in advising these countries, the right wing, usually the far right wing of these countries, on how to use lawfare to stop these left wing or leftist candidates or leaders. It succeeded against Evo Morales. Kirchner in Argentina, it succeeded. She was likely going to be the next president, but instead they were able to put in Javier Milei because they used lawfare. Lawfare is the tactic of getting corrupt judges or judges that are far right wing to bring false charges or agree to, I guess they maybe don't bring them, but those charges then allow these leaders to either be locked up or to be sidelined if they can't run for president, like in Kirchner's case in Argentina. Once she was convicted, she couldn't run for president. With Lula da Silva in Brazil, he was in prison for several years, and that was how Bolsonaro got to power. Now, Lula's imprisonment was undone thanks to largely leaked text that showed the corruption of these judges and these prosecutors. Lula got out of prison, ran for president, and now is back in power. So that one was undone. But once you have these lawfare accusations that succeed in stopping these people from running for president, well, then you end up with what the mainstream media is calling the centrist, but really neoliberal garbage, winning the elections.
And redistributing the wealth through public investment. Evo also has a legacy of having passed legislation to entrench indigenous rights. He was reelected 3 more times, including in October 2019, when the Bolivian people elected him outright in the first round of the vote to govern until this year, 2025. He was then removed in a violent fascist military and police coup and replaced by Janine Áñez.
Janine Áñez, I covered that when it happened. It was very violent. The U.S. supported it. The U.S. jumped in and, declared her the president of Bolivia rather quickly, which is one of the tactics as well in these violent coups, is the U.S. will say, the moment that the fake president, Juan Guaido is another example, walks into the state house or declares themselves the president or whatever, the U.S. goes, oh, yeah, they're a president. And then every country that the U.S. Basically controls, like most of Europe and all these other islands and things, Nauru is always quick to agree with the United States. they all jump in as well. So then you have these news stories about how 53 countries already acknowledged that Juan Guaido is the president of Venezuela. And it's like, yeah, 53 countries who were sucking off the United States. So, yeah, what a surprise. They all said Juan Guaido, never got a vote for president, is the president. So same happened with this woman in Bolivia,
which lasted 12 months. In 2020, the mass rank and file and the Bolivian people put Luis Arce in power to recover the country from the fascist regime, only to be betrayed.
Part of the same movement as Rafael Correa, but he ended up betraying the movement, betraying MAS voters by not standing for the same things as Correa. It's kind of similar as Moreno in Ecuador.
The movement towards socialism, or MAS, at least its name and trademark, were stolen and repurposed by the Arce government. Key founders of the political instrument are no longer a part of that party. Arce's interior minister, who led the state persecution of Evo and the criminalization of indigenous rural communities, was absurdly selected as candidate for this new imposter party. He polled between 1% and 2%, even with the full endorsement of the government.
He pulled between 1% and 2%. I mean, that shows you how much the people of Bolivia realized that they've been had, that it was bullshit, that this guy is a garbage human being. This was one of the largest movements in Bolivia, the one led initially by Evo Morales. And here you have the guy they put up for president gets between 1% and 2%.
Which was elected by 55% of the country just 5 years ago. We're now in a new phase of the same 2019 coup, in which the right-wing campaign to exclude Evo from the ballot was successful. Without him as an option, 2 right-wing candidates advancing to the runoff was inevitable. The 8 presidential candidates include familiar faces representing the country's wealthiest, who promise swift neoliberal reforms like deregulation and privatization of Bolivia's state companies. They also intend to liberalize the economy to attract more foreign investment to Bolivia's lithium and other mining and natural resources. And if they or any of their right-wing candidate allies take power, they'll be implementing sweeping austerity and closely aligning Bolivia with the U.S. and the NATO West. The massacres of Sacaba and Sincata will go unpunished, and the persecution of social and political leaders will continue. The perpetrators of the crimes against the Bolivian people will be released from prison.
She's talking about the 2019 violent coup in which people were, mayors in small towns and stuff that were, aligned with Evo Morales. They were dragged out of their homes and dragged down the street and, stabbed and beaten. And that's what was going on. That's what the U.S. supported. That's what the U.S. said was a legitimate election. And then when MAS got back into power, the perpetrators of that violent coup in prison, now she's saying they'll be released.
On the other hand, under Luis Arce's government, Evo Morales and the leaders of the indigenous campesino movement have been the target of a desperate lawfare campaign. In the final weeks of the campaign, Evo and his supporters across the country promoted the null vote in rejection of this farce of an electoral process. Without the main grassroots bloc on the ballot, the right and the oligarchs, like Marcelo Claude, backed by the imperialist United States, will take power, the culmination of that process which began in 2019.
There you have it. This is the culmination of a coup that lasted 6-7 years with the help of the United States. It's been stage managed by the United States, all to get at the lithium and other resources that Bolivia has, and also to take another player out of the socialist bloc in Latin America, which the U.S. believes we own, and also to take another country out of possible BRICS partnership. I assume that this will stop them from connecting to BRICS as Argentina basically withdrawn from BRICS as well. And the U.S. views BRICS, perhaps even more than getting the lithium. The U.S. views BRICS as one of the most powerful and dangerous competitors to the U.S. dollar. If BRICS keeps growing, which it has been, if it keeps growing, then the U.S. dollar will continue to peter out as it has been. The goal is to slowly pick off all the countries that would be part of BRICS, such as Argentina was going to be an important member of BRICS and is now not, because they succeeded with a lawfare coup to get Javier Milei into office, who has been a nightmare for Argentina, and we just sent him $20 billion. Trump was like, well, you got to help this guy continue to destroy Argentina. Meanwhile, the U.S. doesn't have money to give to starving children in the United States. Literally, they're cutting off SNAP benefits, which is, food stamps. It is people who can't afford food, who can't afford to survive in one of the richest countries in the fucking world. And we're cutting those off. And instead, we're sending $20 billion down to Javier Milei so he can keep squandering it in Argentina. And it's not given to his people either. It just evaporates into smoke. The people are struggling in Argentina. You've got 2/3 of the country, is it, in poverty? It's crazy there. The value of their currency is lost. It's lost 2/3 of its value in the matter of the 2 years Malay's been in power. That's what the U.S. is doing right now. I'm sorry. I think I phrased that wrong. We're bringing democracy, okay? We're bringing democracy to Latin America, to all those countries. A lot of democracy. Also, we're dropping democracy onto fishing boats off of Venezuela, exploding democracy onto fishing boats off of Venezuela. So that should help as well, I think.